I was always a heavy drinker.
Right.
From 16 and a half, alcohol was pretty much a part of my life. Without a drink, you just can't have fun. Alcohol, I think, is probably the most damaging social substance that there has ever been. Alcohol has nearly killed me on 4 or 5 occasions. I mean, I can honestly say that alcohol has never led to anything positive happening in my life, ever. It's all been negative. Oh, I could have spent a lot more time with my kids than I did, because of the drinking. But I was one of those people that you would call, you're on the borderline of managing your life.
Functioning alcoholic, yeah. The thing about alcohol in our culture, in Western culture, and particularly, I mean, we're both British, we're both English, so in our culture, alcohol is very much accepted. And from a young age, you see your family members, be it parents, aunties, uncles, all drinking at social occasions, and you're always told that, I remember actually asking my granddad, why do people drink? And he said, well, it kind of enhances a good time. So we're growing up with a real sort of positive look on alcohol. But for me, actually, I think it gets away with a lot because it gets promoted everywhere. TV programs, YouTube channels, everywhere, right? And for me, it's among the biggest poisons in the world. And I've seen many a life shattered because of alcohol. Now, let me ask you this, Paul. Your relationship with drinking, for example, would have started at what sort of age? We normally start quite young in
16 and a half. And the reason why is because I was on my own at 16 and a half. I got a job in a factory, and the guys that I hung around with were 21, 19, 20, 21. So I became a regular at the regular pub.
Yep.
I was in the darts team, right? And we're playing away. And all of a sudden our captains come over and says, Paul, you can't play. Why? Because they found out you're underage, the other team. And I was the star player, But no, alcohol, I pretty much slipped into it. You build up a tolerance to it, I'd have 2 or 3 pints at lunchtime, back to work. Most evenings I'd be down the pub from pretty much when it opened to when it closed.
I mean, for me, it started really young. I mean, we'd be like 13, 14. And I was the tallest, so I get sent into the off licence, right? And so
Deep voice.
Yeah, we look forward to a Friday night, and we go for whatever the most alcohol content for your money, like Thunderbird,
right? Yeah,
or Mad Dog 2020, or something like that. Yeah. And we drink ourselves silly on a Friday night, and it just went on from there. I think that you go to work at every level, people just drink.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, they do. They do. People drink for different reasons, I think.
I think most people start drinking to be sociable.
Yes.
And just to get, as we like to say, to get off the nut,
to explore, yeah.
Right. And you were saying something earlier about we're always pushed that line, aren't we, that we need alcohol to have a good time.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I can honestly say about the British culture, it instilled something in me that took years to get rid of. It instilled into me that without a drink, you just can't have fun. I would never consider, years and years ago, going to any function where there was no alcohol. I'd be like, what's the point? And I think a lot of people from the UK would agree with me on that point. That alcohol kind of, if there's no alcohol, how can it be fun? And it took years for me to get rid of that. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm slightly younger, and for me what changed it was the rave culture, 89, 90, 91. Mm-hmm. Suddenly you go to football grounds and there'd be like marijuana smoke coming up from one end, and there'd be people smiling because they've been raving and probably taking ecstasy and stuff like that the night before. So I think that curtailed some of the drinking culture for a little while. In England, people used to talk about it because suddenly there was no violence.
Right.
You know, you go to raves and clubs and that, and people didn't want to fight. Because I'm from a market town where it's kudos who can be the hardest geezer in each year at school. Who can be the toughest fighter? You know. We used to be proud. We had 54 pubs in 2 square miles, and there's some big lumps that have come from my town, and you know.
Right.
And I can say all of what I'm talking about there, the violence, the fighting, the football violence that I can think of, different people involved, all fueled by drink.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
But your relationship with drink, would you say, when you came to Thailand, would you say you drank more, or would you say you started drinking more and more over the years? Or
I was always a heavy drinker.
Right.
From 16 and a half, alcohol was pretty much a part of my life. I was different to most people in one respect. You know, say you go to a Saturday night party, you know, everybody has loads of fun. I'd probably open my eyes at 6 a.m. wherever I'd be sleeping, on the floor or the couch or in a bed, and my first thought was, go get a drink. And for me, the morning after drink, because I'd begin then, and I'd go all through the day. The morning after drink was the best buzz of them all. It was like a nice buzz. And if there was no alcohol, then I'd just go around to all the half-empty glasses and make up a nice concoction and just drink that.
Hair of the dog, or would you?
Hair of the dog, be the whole dog.
And what sort of age would you be doing that?
I started doing that about 19.
Right. And at that time, how many days a week would you be drinking, do you reckon?
Just about every day. About every day.
How many? What would be a normal sort of session, do you reckon?
5, 6 pints, 7 pints.
Right, okay.
I was never a shorts drinker, really. I got into wine at one point, but no, the first few years it was mainly beer. Now, I left England, as you know, not long after that, and I did go back in the summers. But when I was in other countries, I kind of was a bit surprised that everybody else wasn't like they are in the UK regarding alcohol.
What do you mean, binge drinking?
Yeah. They weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't binge drinking when I was in England, full stop. My first introduction to that was in 2004. And I took my family back to the UK, and I'm out with my brother-in-law in the centre of Northampton, and there's 4 girls, and they're all crowded around something, and I'm like, what's going on over there? Is there a problem? And he says, no, they're just hoofing up. You know, they're binge drinkers, and girls were coming out of pubs, finding a quiet corner, putting their fingers down their throat, bringing it all up, and then going back in for some more, because they wouldn't get so drunk. I mean, obviously, if you've got a belly full of alcohol and you bring it out, then it's not going to absorb into your system. I threw up quite a lot on alcohol, but and then I'd go drink some more.
But everything's encouraged, isn't it? Even when you go on holiday, for example, when the Brits go abroad, we go to wherever. We go to Spain, we go to Spanish islands, Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria, wherever. Yeah. But all those places, as well as let's say, Jimmy's Gutbuster breakfast, all you can eat for €1, you'd have drink offers.
Yeah.
Everywhere,
sure. Hours.
shots, free everything. So, I mean, my thing is that I'm not saying that I hate alcohol. I'm saying that it's always promoted. Yes. It's always promoted as this wonderful thing, and because obviously people are paying money in tax, whereas everything else is,
Yeah. No, alcohol, I think, is probably the most damaging social substance that there has ever been, in terms of the damage it does to society.
Yep.
I would say probably at least 70% of the people who are in a jail in the UK right now are in jail because of something they did when they were drinking. That's how bad I think it is.
I've made some pretty terrible decisions drinking, mate. I was telling you before, just very briefly. I had a bit of an all-day drinking session 20 odd years ago, more than that. I was in my 20s, in and around Chinatown. Long story short, I woke up about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning behind a couple of dumpsters with a bin bag, surrounded by about 8 or 9 dogs sleeping around me that had obviously been protected.
Right.
I might add that my pants were still up. I hadn't been bummed by the dogs or anything like that. It was all good. But the point is, every time I've ended up like that, or any bad story that I've got involved in myself, drink's often involved. Poor decisions made. Some people get violent. Some people get soppy. Some people get a little crazy. But I mean, so that was then. I mean, how did your relationship continue sort of through your 20s or 30s, or
with alcohol? Up
until you came here? Were you drink? Did you used to go to work and then straight to the pub?
Well, I've often wondered this. I purely by luck, I landed this great job in England. I was about 19 and a half, and I landed this great job where I would work in a team, and we would drive a big truck to somewhere like the south of France, and then we'd put up this exhibition stand, all aluminium stuff it was. We'd put this huge thing up, a couple of 100 square meters, and then we'd leave the truck there and we'd fly back to the UK, and then when the show was finished, we'd fly back, take it all down and bring it all back again. And I think I'd had this job for close to a year, and it was great. The money was good. I was given £17 a night for accommodation. Of course, slept in the truck with the other guys and spent the money on booze. Anyway, I lost that job because I got done for drink driving. Middle of St Albans High Street. Yeah. About 11:30 in the evening, I'm driving my MG soft top sports car down the high street at about 30 miles an hour, and the cassette tape that I wanted to play fell on the floor. So like a twat, I looked down at that and went straight into the back of a parked car. Boom! So loud. And that was me done. So I lost that job. But that didn't stop me drinking.
So you got done for drink driving. Is that the only time you ever got done for drink driving?
No, twice.
Right.
Twice.
So when did, if you don't mind me asking, I'm not trying to lead you anywhere, but when did you stop drink driving? Did you do it when you stopped drink driving? Was that a moral reason, or because you hurt yourself, or does that make sense?
One time after I went on the bender over here, and I drove my truck home, and I don't even remember that. And I asked my wife, what was I like? She said, you could hardly stand up. You fell out of the truck. So that really hit home to me, because I thought to myself, Christ, I could have killed someone, And I stopped.
No, you're right, because when we're drunk, we think we're great drivers, which is, I know the irony in what I'm saying there, it's...
And actually, if I'm to be honest about it, alcohol has nearly killed me on 4 or 5 occasions. I've had lots of extreme car and bike accidents, and most of them were down to alcohol. And if I hadn't worn my belt, I wouldn't be here now. Certainly with 2 accidents.
Do you mind telling us about one of them? Or...
Yeah, it's quite funny actually. It's a long one.
I don't mind.
Okay, I would say this would be about 1983, 84. I'm driving a Volvo estate. I went to see a friend of mine in Brighton, good friend of mine, Brian. And while I'm there, we shared a bottle of Glenlivet, nice malt, and I bought 7 grams of this black Nepalese hash off him, very sticky, Now, I was over the limit, but I certainly wasn't drunk. This is over a period of 5 or 6 hours we did this bottle. So 2 o'clock in the morning, I decided, okay, I'm going home now. So I'm going down the I think it was the M25, in the fast lane, doing about 70, 80. And this particular stretch, there weren't any lights overhead. And I got one arm leaning on the door like you do, holding on the wheel like that, and I got a front blowout. Boom, because it rips the wheel from you, I had my belt on. It rolled 3 or 4 times, then it went end to end 3 or 4 times, and it ended up on its roof on the fast lane. So I got out through the broken window. All the windows were punched out. I got out through the road, instantly sobered up, holy fuck. And 3 or 4 cars had stopped and people came over, and we all pushed this Volvo on its roof. We all pushed it to the hard shoulder, and that was really difficult. And one guy was looking for oncoming traffic. And we got it to the side there, and I don't know how long later, this big blue Range Rover comes up onto the hard shoulder, right? What's going on here then?
What, police?
Yeah. What's happened here then? So, of course, I explained, you the driver? Yes, sir. Have you been drinking? Now, I knew I was going to, I'm up for it. There's no way I'm going to get away with this. And I said, yes. Well, how much? I said, well, more than the legal limit, but that had nothing to do with the accident. So anyway, they say to me, right, well, what you're going to have to do now is you're going to have to come back to the station with us and sign all these papers, and then we'll bail you out. And you'll have to appear in court in this area somewhere in the next month or 2. I said, right, fine, okay. So no handcuffs or nothing like that. So I'm sat in the back of this big Range Rover, and we're going along the motorway there, and all of a sudden I thought, holy shit, the first thing they're going to do when I get in there is search, take everything out your pockets. And this lump of hash was in my little hip pocket of my jeans, that little hip pocket? Yeah. So I had this thought, what am I going to do? I could easily dump it behind the seat. But then I remembered a friend of mine saying, nobody's ever died from THC, and it cost me £30, which is a lot of money in them days. So I made the terrible decision of chewing it all. 7 grams, right? So I'm chewing this hash. Boy, it's difficult. How long's this trip going to be? It's about another 12-13 minutes we'll be at the station. Okay, so get to the station. I've got all these black bits stuck between my teeth, because I had teeth then. Drank a gallon of water, and then sat down in this office with this sergeant guy, And so he gets out his pad and he's asked, I said, can we do this quickly? Yeah, sure. Name, address and all this. And we're doing all this for a few minutes, and then suddenly the police station doors burst open. This was New Year's Eve, by the way. Yeah, New Year's Eve. And about 8 cops came in with all these hooligans, and it was bedlam. And this guy just got up and said, excuse me, and off he's gone. And he was gone for about 15 minutes while they subdued all these guys and everything else. Yeah. So he's come back and sat down and says, where were we? And I'm like this, I'm holding this wrist, and I'm like this. And it's starting to kick in, And we got a little bit further, and I said to him, I'm feeling a bit weird. Could I just lay down somewhere, anywhere? And he said, well, yeah, we can put you in one of the cells. We won't lock the door. I said, that would be great, thank you. So that's what happens. I go there. They make sure I got no belt or anything like that. We'll leave the door open for you. Yeah. So I laid down on my back, and it started to come on in waves and waves and waves. And oh boy, I kept thinking to myself, what a stupid prat I was. Greed, that's all it was.
Tripping out where you were.
Oh, yeah. God. And I don't know how long time went by. I would say at least a day, maybe longer. And all of a sudden I opened my eyes, because I could just about move my eyelids, but absolutely nothing else could I move.
Could I just ask the audience member whose phone is going off to turn it off while we're doing this? Thanks, cheers. Yeah. Oh, it's you.
Yeah, I was wondering who it was, that's all. So this has to be the worst decision I ever made in my life. And I kept saying to myself, you won't die, you're going to be all right. Suddenly I open my eyes and I can see 4 boots right next to my head. And I hear this voice saying, how long's he been in here? Nearly 2 days now. And what's he in here for then? Oh, he was involved in a car accident, quite a bad one. He's wrecked his wheel, his motor was wrecked. And the guy says, and he hasn't been to the hospital? No, he seemed all right. Oh, God, he's probably got some brain injury, and we're going to get the arse sued off us. So the next thing I know, I'm in this ambulance, right? And I'm looking up, and I can see all the lights flashing outside, and there's some guy looking at me, you'll be all right, you'll be all right, you'll be all right. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want this to happen, I'm thinking to myself. My mind was there, So then comes the trolley bit, and they get me in this room with all these people who are suited up, you know, and I can't speak. And they're looking at me, and so one of them decides they're going to stomach pump me. So they get this long tube and they grease it up, and they're about to stick it through my nose, and I went, I ate some hash. What? I ate some hash. Okay, hands down. And they put me on a trolley and left me in the corridor of this hospital for 3 days, Jim. Right. So by this time I've lost 5 days of my life. And it was only after 3 or 4 days on this trolley that I managed to get myself together, get out actually walk out of the hospital, see how much cash I'd got on me, and I got a coach home. But God, that was a disastrous thing I did there.
Let me ask you this then. Did that incident put you off either hash or alcohol?
No. I was convinced, and I still am to this day, that had that tyre not blown, I would have got home fine. Because on a scale of 1 to 10, I was 4 or 5 in terms of what I would call inebriation.
Right.
And of course, you got to remember that around about this time, it wasn't such a bad thing. I know that sounds terrible, but it really wasn't looked upon as being so much of a bad thing in the 70s and early 80s. You know, a lot of people did it. Of course, you can't go back and change things. So, I mean, I can honestly say that alcohol has never led to anything positive happening in my life, ever. It's all been negative.
And so by the time you fast forward a few years, by the time you got to Thailand,
I drank more here.
And let me see, when I got here, I mean, I'll add in a minute, I don't, as you know, I barely drink, but I used to drink. I mean, binge drink, I wasn't a big drinker, but when I first got here, I was pleasantly surprised by things like big bottles of Chang,
right,
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
the fact that I could have 3 of those and be
But for me, you know, by the time I got to Thailand, I'd already got myself into a certain routine with alcohol. I was one of these guys who could drink for 24 hours straight, you know, because I'd pace myself. Did you pace yourself, or did you have like... But no, I wanted to be in that state of inebriation all the time without going too far. So I'd refuse drinks sometimes because I think, no, it'll make me sick.
What do you reckon though, like the things like mixers like Coca-Cola and stuff keep you awake a little bit? Do you used to do that, or...?
I loved wine.
Right.
I seriously got into wine. And I'd drink rum and cokes, and especially here I got into the Sang Tip. It's now called Sang Som.
No, there were 2 different ones. Sang Tip.
Sang Tip. It's not whiskey, by the way, even though it looks like it's rum.
Yeah.
So I used to get, you know, a half bottle of that, Coke and a bucket of ice, and that I'd be fine for an evening.
The old factory's on Ram Intra.
Right, yeah. But I'd get through a half bottle on my own in a couple of hours.
So you just actually said something about, you were saying that you stayed awake. Now, the urban myth, just after I first got here, Sang Tip was still here, and they said that there was Sang Tip, Sang Som, and Sang Tip got cancelled because they had an amphetamine, or an amphetamine type thing that was proved illegal. That was the urban myth.
Ooh, was it?
So maybe, I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, coming up, but the urban myth might be wrong. If there's any Thai watchers, correct me on that, please. But that's what was said. It was cancelled because they both had things that kept you awake a bit, but one, it might have been an illegal ingredient. I might be wrong. That might be an urban myth. Anyway, sorry, go on. So, for example, when you lived in the deep south, didn't you? Or quite far down south when you first got here?
Well, yeah. When I went down there, they kept offering me this rice whiskey, this Lao Cow, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I definitely being an intrepid traveller who's been all over the place, I knew that to refuse was not good. So I'd drink it, you know, and I'd go, and they'd all laugh, you know, because it seemed to me that the whole purpose was to get the phalang steamed on our Lao Cow, and of course it didn't take them long to realise that I could outdrink them. Yeah, and so I didn't really drink much beer when I was down south. But I was quite fond of the 40 degree Lao Cow because I didn't get a hangover from it at all. You know, you could have a glass of water in the morning and you'd kind of be there again
And so, like, throughout your teaching career, what sort of...
Okay,
In the
20 odd
evening
years
or-
as a teacher. No, I was very good in terms of managing my drinking. It wouldn't affect my life. Well, I say it wouldn't affect my life. I kept my job. You know, I didn't take days off. I was okay with the family, although I could have spent a lot more time with my kids than I did, you know, because of the drinking. But I was one of those people that you would call, well, you're on the borderline of managing your life.
Functioning alcoholic, yeah.
And even when I stopped going out, I still used to drink. You know, I still used to drink. And then I discovered Kratom.
So, like, hang on, we missed a bit there. So, I reckon, when did you, what age were you when you thought to yourself, hang on, because I remember you saying to me that you just don't like being drunk particularly anymore, the way it feels. How old were you when you suddenly thought, actually, I'm not sure if I should be drinking. I'm not sure if drinking is positive for my life anymore.
Well, it never got to that stage.
It didn't, no?
What stopped me from drinking heavy was the hangovers. They progressively got worse and worse and worse. And so all of a sudden, I'm not looking at a couple of hours in the morning where I'm going to feel a bit groggy. I'm looking at walking on my hands and knees for a whole day, the next day. So that automatically made me think, well, okay, I've got to balance it up here, you know, the pros and the cons. And once the cons became that big, I thought, it's just not worth it.
Sure.
I mean, I've always been a weed smoker, but one thing I will say, if I'm being absolutely honest here, that thing I talked about earlier about you've gotta have a drink to have fun. That's still within me, only it's not drink now. It's almost like you've got to have some kind of mind-altering substance to feel good and to feel normal.
I'll go along with that, because I could sit here really self-righteously and say something like this. I could say, look, when around about the time my son was born 17 years ago, I could be really self-righteous and say, well, I didn't think, just for me personally, not for everyone, everyone's different. For me personally, drinking wasn't conducive to fatherhood for me at that time. But I can't be that self-righteous, because at the same time, as you know, I've always been a potted. I've always had a love of the herb. So I've had something. So I just switched it round, really. And I felt, for me, when my boy was young and everything like that, smoking weed rather than drinking helped me.
Right, yeah.
You know, be around, be calm, do all this sort of thing. And it's just continued. Now he's a bit older, he doesn't need me quite in the same way.
Right.
I just haven't returned to alcohol. It was my mate's 18th birthday a couple of months ago, and I think I had 3 drinks. And I think that might be the only time this year
Right.
that I've had a drink.
Right.
You know?
Well, I enjoy a glass of wine now and again, but other than that, I'm really not interested in it.
But you went from heavy drinker to almost stopping overnight, and you've often said, and I would definitely go along with this, what helped you was what? How did you stop? I know what it was. Kratom, right?
Yeah. I'd quit teaching about a year before this,
right.
and I was blogging for a living, you know. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'd think, let's have a sang tip and coke. So I'd just go down the shop, spend $150, put it all there, and I'd be working around, and I'd be, drinking this. Well, an hour and a half later, it's gone. And I then have to think, well, do I go and get another one, which ruins the day, because I won't be able to do any work, or do I call it a day? So I'll call it a day. I'd get half an hour's more work done, and then I'd have to go to sleep. So I was at that stage, and by this time, my kids were 16 and 14.
Right.
No, older than that, 18, 19. They were already introduced to weed, and they smoked weed at home, and I didn't have any problem with that. And they didn't like alcohol that much, which I thought was great. But they started to make this drink, and it's called Kratom tea. So one day I said, let me have a glass of that tea. So I had a glass of the tea, and wow, it was a mood elevator, and it made me very focused.
What's Kratom?
Kratom is a tree that grows in Southeast Asia, and its leaves when boiled or chewed, give you a boost, much like caffeine. And
it's always been used here on the local level, hasn't
yes,
it?
it
For
always
workers
has.
and everything,
yeah,
right?
yeah. The manual workers would chew a couple of leaves, you know. So my kids used to make a drink out of it, and they put Coke with it and all this, and it tasted really nice. So I got into the tea, and I still drink the tea. I maybe have a glass and a half a day, 2 glasses a day. Did my research online. Everybody says it's addictive, but I've stopped 2 or 3 times and had no problem at all. Kratom is like weed, it's a wonder plant. And it's got lots of people off the opiates in
really?
the USA and Canada.
That's positive.
It's $1 billion business.
You were saying that in North America there's a market for like powder and pills.
Yes, Kratom powder. Kratom, they call
Okay.
it, the Americans. Kratom. It's actually Kratom.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a huge market for it. And Big Pharma hate it, obviously, because it gets people off their addictive opiates. Yeah.
I know, for example, here when they had the whole lockdown and they had alcohol ban, there was a very, very popular bar for youngsters on the edge of Chinatown, and temporarily they changed their entire menu from alcohol to
Right.
Kratom, all their cocktails and everything, and it was so successful. I believe they have 2 places now,
Right.
one for alcohol and one for Kratom.
Up until 2 years ago, Kratom was illegal in Thailand.
Right.
It was 500 baht for a kilo of leaves at that time. 3 months after it became legal, it was 300 baht a kilo, and now it's 150 baht a kilo. But there's no reason why it should be illegal, just the same as marijuana, you know. And I like it a lot because it helps me with my work. It keeps me focused. I can focus for a few hours
Right.
without any interruptions. And I've introduced probably 7 foreigners, including you, to Kratom. And I haven't had one that's come back and said, "Oh, I don't like that." They all like it.
I've never had too much. Let me ask you this: what's it like? Because we all know if you have a few too many drinks or a lot too many drinks, it can go from not too bad to
Right.
really bad, vomiting everywhere, feeling like death. How bad could it be if you do drink way too much?
If you drink too much, then it's a bit like getting too stoned. You get all white and clammy and sweating. You have to lay down for an hour. I've done that a few times, you know, by accident.
Yeah, I can.
But here's the thing:
Yeah.
while you're under the influence of this Kratom, you're actually not under the influence of it. It's a mood elevator. Your coordination is perfect. In fact, I would say that one of the reasons why the Muay Thai boxers chew Kratom before they work out, and indeed before they fight, is because it enhances you.
Right.
You're very alert, you know. I got one friend who I introduced Kratom to, and the second time he came to my house, he had a pint of it, and he went home and did his complete garden. It took him all day, and he'd never done that before.
I mean, as you know, I've not had it very much, but it always tends to do the other thing to me. It always makes me a little sleepy,
Right.
you know. But
Right. Well, we're all different.
but it's
so
still, I like it.
substances-
I do like it though. The few times I've tried it, I've thought it's been really nice. It has
Well, I think
def-
I can honestly say that got me
Yeah.
off alcohol.
mood enhancer.
Yeah, because I think at that time I still had this thing in me where you've got to have some mind-altering substance to feel good. So
Yeah.
by getting rid of the alcohol and picking up Kratom, which to me there were no downsides to it, it did me a great favour. I don't think I'd be alive today if I'd been carried on drinking the way I was. So yeah, I better see who that is.
Just so this isn't just the negative sides of alcohol and things like that.
Are there any positives?
Well, no, not really a positive, but let's have maybe alcohol-induced stories that could be either funny or
I got one for you.
or shocking.
I
you
got
know?
one for you. I was about 21, I guess. I was at a party somewhere in England. Big party, a couple of hundred people there. And suddenly some guy says, "Who doesn't know how to play the blanket game?" So I just look at him, and nobody's putting their hand up or anything. Come on, there must be somebody. So what does idiot here do? "I don't know the blanket game." "Right, okay." So he comes over, he says, "Right, this is how it's played." He says, "We want you to write on this piece of paper an item of clothing that you're wearing give that to us. And then, then you get under this blanket, right, on the floor. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, then you have to try and guess what we've written down. So you have to say something that you're wearing. And if you're right, that's it. You win a prize, the game's over. But if you're wrong, you got to take that thing off and put it outside the blanket.
Sounds dodgy, mate.
So I'm listening to this. I'm thinking, okay, then, yeah, I'm up for that. So I'm under the blanket. Off, okay. So, sorry, it's they write down something. Yeah, not me. They write down something. So I go, shoes. Nope. So off come my trainers and slide them out of the thing. Shirt. Nope. Shirt comes off. Put that outside the blanket. Jewellery. No. So my rings come off and my bracelet come off. My watch. No. Watch comes off. Jeans. No. So jeans come off. By this time I've just got a pair of underpants on, you know. So I went, underwear. No. So I thought about it. I thought, gotta come off then. So I took them off and put them outside, and because I'm totally naked under this blanket now, and there's probably about 50 people in a big circle all around us. And I said, well, that's pretty much it. He said, well, I'll give you a clue. You're under it right now. And I went, blanket. And they went, yes. And they pulled the blanket right off. And there you are, totally bollock naked in front of all these people. And I thought, oh dear, I didn't see that one coming.
Whoops. So tell us about, I mean, Bangkok, like back in the day, let's go back 20, 30 years. What sort of spots would you, or areas would you
Soy
hang out?
Cowboy.
That was your favourite area,
Yeah,
was it?
yeah. I don't know why I didn't have a nice feeling with Nana at all. And Pat Pong was a bit too commercialised for me. And I enjoyed Soy Cowboy.
I bet you met some characters there.
Oh boy, yes.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yes.
But I mean, could you, for example, could you go somewhere like Soy Cowboy and not drink and enjoy yourself, do you reckon? It's probably conducive to drink, no?
Yeah, it's conducive to drink, of course. Yes. No, I'd go there for 2 or 3 days sometimes, you know, get lost totally. And I knew most of the girls and they were all good with me, you know. I never ever had any problems with anybody. Well, I was a happy drunk, you know. I wasn't one of these guys
that's good.
that looks for a problem. I was happy, bordering on the bothersome, you know. Bit flamboyant I was. I'd get up there on the pole. Get up there on the pole with the girls, and you know, sometimes the bar owner didn't like it, and sometimes they did.
Right, okay. I couldn't even imagine you doing that, but then again, I haven't seen you after 12 gins.
No,
so,
right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That could
no,
be...
I did some stupid stuff when I got drunk. Sure.
What did your missus used to say when you used to come home like legless? Did you just used to tut and go, oh?
She figured out that giving me a hard time wouldn't work, wouldn't do anything. So what she used to do was I'd come in and she'd get me a glass of ice water and she'd bring it over, put it on the table next to me and smile, and that hurt. You know, that hurt. She knew how to get to me, and I'd think, shit, I can't keep, you know, I'm treating her like this. I've gone for a day and a half and she's been really nice to me, you know.
Kill 'em with kindness, mate.
And fair play to my wife.
Smart.
She stuck through me. I wasn't a terrible husband or father, but alcohol was definitely a part of my life, and I wasn't going to give that up for anybody, you know.
They say that it becomes number one more than probably anything else.
Yeah.
At times, you know, I've seen loads of people where it would be number one choice, I think, you know.
But I think the reason why the kratom helped me is because it came in liquid form. So I went from drinking alcohol to just drinking a tea. So I had all I still had all the actions, you know, like when you're trying to quit smoking, you can put something in your mouth and go like that.
That's what I did. I quit cigarettes like that.
So I think that, well, I actually believe, and my wife also believes this, that kratom saved my life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you just can't go on drinking and drinking and drinking and expect to get through it, you know. I'm lucky I don't have any liver damage. Don't appear to.
How long since you've been, like, would you say, heavy drink? How many years was it? When you
3 now.
Right, okay.
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 years. And I can take it or leave it. You know, I just can take it or leave it. And most of the time I'll leave it. I enjoy the kratom tea. It's a nice feeling. You
And,
know,
I mean-
it's almost like a feeling you feel when you feel you're going to feel a feeling that you feel you've never felt before.
I know one of those, mate. I've felt one of those often, or I've tried to feel one anyway.
Right.
But what?
My biggest fear was that my kids would grow up and get into alcohol like I did. That was my biggest fear. And I never tried to put them off it. I just thought, well, let's see what happens. And they turned out that both of them, that they don't really like it, you know? They don't really like it. So I'm very fortunate there, and so are they. Because, you know, I always look at people who've never, ever gone into alcohol because they had a bad experience at the beginning maybe, and I think, how lucky you are. Because, you know, so many of us, once we get into it, we don't come out the other end.
Yeah, I guess for me, I always had another crux, and as you know, that was weed. So
Right.
I've always
Yeah.
had that to rely on. I chose that over alcohol.
Yeah. I wonder how many of the viewers to this would agree that where they come from, the culture at home, it teaches you that you've got to have alcohol to have fun. Because that's the way I saw it, and that's the way
And me.
it was instilled into me by society. And I wonder if other people see that, you know.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, there's always a time in that. I mean, there's that English culture of, hey, let's get on
Yeah,
it. Let's
yeah.
go for an all-dayer.
Yeah.
You know, let's go to the races for the day. Let's go here. Let's go on a 2-day session. And
Right.
there's no shame involved, though, when you know, when you're young and you say, I've been on a 3-day bender.
Right, yeah.
There's
yeah.
no shame, you know.
No, there
but
wasn't.
If you can say, well, I've been doing, I don't know, smoking weed or doing whatever 3 days, people are going, "Yeah."
And there's another side
You know?
to it. I mean, you imagine a big wedding, yeah, say 300 people, and most of them don't know the others. How would that kick off if there was no alcohol? How long would they all sit there and look at each other and smile and nod? And even when the music come on, how long would it be before they drop their guard and become natural?
In today's culture, I agree, but you'd be surprised in this area where we are. I know a couple of people who, and Muslim weddings here.
Right.
I'd say coffee and sugar. They're fueled by coffee and sugar. So people get up and dance.
Right,
and,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's not, when you hear the call to prayer and stuff, sometimes you go past the mosques.
Right.
It's actually almost like Middle Eastern disco music, you know?
I also think that the majority of people who have a problem with alcohol, it's mainly because they're trying to escape whatever situation they're in.
Escaping reality, I guess. Isn't it?
I would say that.
I mean, for me, living out in the suburbs here, it's much easier not to drink in terms of, if I was living somewhere downtown, there's bars everywhere.
Right.
I would have probably never really given up the habit.
Yeah.
But here, I'd have to seek it out. I'd have to go to a shop and buy it, or I'd have to go somewhere specifically to drink. So,
yeah.
just, you know, I've got
I consider myself
myself
lucky to have got through my alcohol years, which were probably 38 years, 40 years maybe, without any seemingly permanent damage. I consider myself to be fortunate.
Cheers to that, mate. Clink.
Clink.